We're going to be talking about how to own large enterprises, the enterprises with large attack surfaces that they don't keep an eye on, and how to bust into those. It is going to be very actionable. You may want to take notes. That aside, most people want the slide deck. Slide deck is up on my GitHub. You'll see links for that later. Please feel free to take photographs. Please feel free to post them on social media. This is all very fine. I have, up until April 1st, I have one of the last remaining Twitter verified notable public figure accounts. So they're discontinuing that, but that means that if I retweet you, the entire planet sees it. So if you want free visibility, go ahead and tag me in photos. But other than that, get ready. This is a very nutrient-dense talk. It is a 2-hour keynote that I wrote in 2017 that I'm going to get down to about 1 hour for you guys by skipping over all the defensive stuff. And also, why the heck am I talking about something that I wrote in 2017? It's because I update it every year. And the big inside joke is mostly to me is that I have to change almost nothing. So many things in here still are so effective. And until that's changed, I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep telling everybody how to exploit those things so that we can stop this. So real quick, this is who I am. I'm Johnny Christmas. Nobody really cares what I've done. You want to talk about how to hack things. I'm trying to save some time up here. So also I'm going to be talking very fast. I'll be around the conference all weekend. There probably won't be time for questions during this, but please stop me in the halls. Ask me all the questions you want. I will talk to you for longer than you wanted to talk to me. I guarantee it. But don't worry about interrupting me. People always say that I look busy and they didn't want to bother me. I don't know what the hell that is. I'm not busy. Please bother me. Here's a bunch of links. You can take pictures of that. The GitHub is where you're going to be able to find the, let me move this. GitHub's where you're going to be able to find the slide deck. So make a note of that. I just pushed that origin like in the back of this room just now. So it should all be up there. If you want on my socials, you can find it here at my Linktree /JohnnyXSmith. Most socials, you can just guess my screen name. It's a 0 and a 4. You can guess how old I am because I use the phrase screen name. But that's where you'll find me on Twitter and Instagram. And this is just noisy as hell, isn't it? Okay, overall, I work for the company RIM. If you don't know RIM, you certainly should. We are a predominant leader in securing both our nation's and the globe's critical infrastructure. We focus heavily on transportation, but we do all the critical infrastructure. We are currently also moving into space, which is super cool. I am leaving here to go directly to Washington, D.C. to help train people. That's the... I have to pull a Cheryl and watch my words. I'm training people there in incident response and host forensics to help secure our global infrastructure. Here's a whole bunch of things I've done. Technically, you guys all know what those things are. I went to music school. I'm a musician who ended up in this field. So if you ever think like, oh my God, there's so much to learn here, I am falling way behind. I don't understand any of this. I'm never going to get anywhere. I'm going to be a broken homeless. I went to music school. And the whole time I was in music school, I'm going, I don't get any of this. I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm going to be broken homeless. I'm going to go work in the IT lab. Look what I'm doing now, 20 years later. And most of it was just armchair hacking. So let's get into it. This isn't why we're here. So why am I here? I used to be a pen tester. I was a pen tester for a long time. Kind of still am. I do it, I help out at Grim all the time. I do a lot of security research, which kind of counts as pen testing. I do a lot of auditing of pen tester reports there. I still kind of do it. Why don't I do it anymore? It's right there. Being a pen tester is freaking boring. How surprising is that? How many people here are like, what, that's all I want to do. What are you talking about? That's why I'm going to school. First and foremost, I'll tell you, being a pen tester, 60 to 70% writing, technical writing reports, writing reports. If you are not good at conveying information, if you're not good at writing those reports for specific types of audiences, you will be a worthless pen tester and no one will hire you and nobody will want you to work for them. You have to be able to explain why what you did matters to the company that you did it to. And that's where I see most pen testers fail. If all you did was just come in, wreck the place up, shoot everybody, deuces, I'm out, that's worth it. You didn't do anything. You didn't help anyone. You have to be able to explain why what you wrecked up mattered. And going all the way back to, why did I think being a pen tester is boring? Is it because of all the report writing? No, I actually really like the report writing. It's because I was doing the same thing over and over and over and over, often to the same companies. I would come back in next quarter, next year. All right, let me look at the last report. Let's see what we did. Okay, I'm going to try all these things first. Cool, all these things still work. Why am I here? Why are you spending $125,000 on me to be here for a month instead of $125,000 fixing these problems I told you about a year ago? It's frustrating. Clearly, I'm still frustrated. And so I put together this presentation of where, I guess I'll go hang out here for a bit, where I talk about what I call the magician's secrets. For those of you who are ancient like I am, you might remember a show on Fox, probably mid-90s, maybe early aughts, where they like had the masked magician, and he'd come out and he'd show you how like these famous magic tricks work. And he had to wear a mask because all the other magicians would get angry at him. He's like, they'll kill me. The Magician's Guild will kill me. Like it's D&D Wizards Guild or something. And I got a lot of pen testers who are mad that I do this presentation because I'm giving away all the super easy, what I call cheater bullshit tricks for hacking into large corporations. And they're like, dude, you're making our job hard. We don't want to actually do work. And I was like, that's garbage. Your job should be fun and exciting, and you should have to innovate. You shouldn't have to just do the same thing for 40 years and then retire. That's my mentality. Yours can be different. That's cool. But that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be going through that magician's code. The steps that I list here are not going to be effective against all environments. Upside is, the larger the environment, the larger the company, the larger their attack surface, the more you're going to see more you're going to see effective things coming out of this. They are effective against a huge portion of everything that is currently on the internet, which is a real shame. We're not going to have time to discuss defenses against all of these. I do have slides in here you will watch me actively skip over that talk about defenses. You can grab those off my GitHub if that's something you care about. And I'm also not going to have time to like do deep dives into all of the tools that I talk here. I'm going to skim over the tools that I talk about here, what they're doing. It's going to give you what to Google, basically. It's going to say, use this tool in this context, and then you can go look on YouTube, how do I use this tool? I promise you, everything I mentioned in here has 1,000 very good tutorials on YouTube on how to do it. Why also am I doing this? Because as a defender, if you're looking to be a defender, you have to understand the attacks. If you do not understand the attacks, you will never be able to develop effective means of defending against them. You're just guessing. You're taking shots in the dark. You have to be able to attack as a defender. So let's talk about how we do this. How do pen testers do this? And you know, when I say like how do pen testers do this, what pen testers do is we do attack simulation. We do adversarial emulation. We are actively doing the exact same thing that the attackers are doing. There is a framework that we use, a framework developed by Dave Kennedy, Nick Percoco, Chris Nickerson, a few others, called the Penetration Testing Execution Standard. I'm a big fan. And overall, it follows this flow that you see here. And it makes sure, it was mainly developed to make sure that every penetration test that was going on followed the same flow. It made sure every step possible was followed and make sure everything was done properly. You start with your intelligence gathering. You start from zero. You start doing what those military backgrounds call OSINT, or open source intelligence that you can gather from freely available, sometimes paid available means, but publicly available means one way or another. You start gathering intelligence based on what you can see. What does the attack surface look like? What does the entire footprint of this organization look like? And then what can I exploit based on what I found there? Once we determine what this footprint looks like, we've determined a few different ways that exploit what we're looking at. We move into performing that exploitation. And then exploitation, That might be a bunch of different things. It might be, it might allow us to actually penetrate into the internal network. It might allow us to exfiltrate some data from that internal network. Exploitation can be a lot of things. And depending on what the end result of that is, we go into our post-exploitation. That post-exploitation could be, okay, I'm inside of this network. I'm on a computer inside of this network. Well, what am I going to be able to do with this computer? What is this computer doing? You kind of, I thought that would go back to the initial one again, but hold on. Way too far back. So what that post-exploitation is, what next? It's often a real quick step of what next? What do I do now that I'm in here? And it's either, you're either hitting the big red button, you're doing your kill attack, or you're moving back into your intelligence gathering phase again. Okay, so I've made it onto a computer inside this network. What can I see from here? Okay, so I've exfiltrated data off of this network. My post-exploitation would be, let's start looking through this data. What was that data? Was it a bunch of manuals? Was it a bunch of, that I was able to dump a network share? Something like that. Let's start looking through that. And then once I've parsed all that, I start doing my intelligence gathering once I've parsed through that. All right, is there any intelligence in here? What can I do with this intelligence that I've gathered? Can I exploit something I found in this documentation? Things like that. We go in the circle over and over and over and over again until our time is up as a penetration tester or an attacker, or we've done what we set out to do. Cool, that's the fastest I've ever gotten through that slide. All set. A big thing I want to point out, since we're talking about exploitation, post-exploitation, intelligent attackers, when we hear about APTs, when we hear about nation state XYZs inside of our network, they're not coming in and spinning up virtual machines and installing Cali on them. They're not running Cali inside of there. They have to live off the land. Lost our signal up there. And I'm sure it'll come back. Two reasons for that. One, it's just running, especially Cali. Running Cali inside of an environment that you're not supposed to be in, or an environment that is actively looking for you, is a nightmare. Cali is one of the noisiest operating systems on the planet, and it's built like that intentionally so that you can't do this. It's a nice collection of tools. It's a great thing to spin up if you just need to have access to some tools already installed and you want to play with them. It's phenomenal. Absolutely do it. Does not make a great daily driver operating system. There's much better things for that. And it's not a great attack operating system because it is just constantly screaming at the top of its lungs that it's there. So you don't want to do that. Two, as a real attacker, you often don't have the opportunity to be doing that. Like if you can get into their ESXi host and spin up a new VM with a Cali image on it, you can do a lot worse things, and you are wasting your time middling around with this. Also, third thing, so many of the, forget, spinning up Cali and using Cali and all that. Even if you're on a box, all right, I'm on a Windows host. I need a bunch of tools. I'm going to go download a bunch of tools to use, and I'm going to make my own Cali out of this host I'm in now. So many, effectively, one would hope all attack tools that are out there are going to be caught by any kind of endpoint detection and response that is running on these systems. So you don't want to be downloading these tools and running these tools. It can be a nightmare. You're going to get caught really, really fast. So you have to get really good at utilizing what is already there within the environment. And I'm actually going to go through a bunch of tools here that will allow you to leverage that without actually having to install the tools on the systems. A lot of times what we're going to be doing here is setting up a VPN link into the environment and then running some of those tools locally, at least to our system. But even the way those systems work, or those tools work, is by communicating in a normal, natural manner as any other machine on the network would, looking for network shares, authenticating against services, logging in as valid users, things like that. Things that endpoint detection and response, SIMs, SOCs, MSPs, whatever you got looking for attackers aren't alerting on. Whose environment is alerting on every valid user that logs in successfully in one attempt? That's a ruthless data set for them. That's what we attempt to do. The primary thing that we attempt to do as intelligent attackers is become an employee of the company. And whether that means creating an account for ourselves, that's valid or stealing somebody else's. That's the end goal. Become an employee of a company, become the insider threat. I like to say that all intelligent attackers are an insider threat because that's what they strive to be. That is step one, is become the insider threat. Then, as an insider, go about what looks like normal business until you have succeeded in what you're trying to do. So let's start out with our recon. Let's go back to what I was talking about with passively discovering what is publicly available for these companies. Where do they live on the internet? What is their internet footprint? A great place to look is Aaron. Who's familiar with Aaron? A-R-I-N? Sure, just throw some hands up. Make me happy I'm up here. Cool. That's a lot of hands. I like that. It's really exciting because a lot of times it's no hands and it's really depressing. Aaron, the American Registry of Internet Numbers, is who assigns public IP addresses to organizations, and that database is absolutely public. I'm just looking up here, so you're like, oh man, this guy's dropping docs on City of Chicago up here. This is all public information. And so, what can I pull out of here? I can pull out, they've got a /16. So I know every possible IP address of public-facing systems that they have on the internet. Cool, that's nice. I can pull out email addresses. Cool. What are email addresses good for? I talk about that a little bit. If not, I'm gonna drop spoilers now. Email addresses, of course, yeah, phishing for sure. They're also good for authenticating. We'll talk about how they're good for authenticating later. Going even back to the phishing. So like I got one guy here, he's probably pretty big if his name is up here in Aaron as like the point of contact for their /16. But it also tells me the format of their email addresses. I see first name dot last name at this domain. Cool. What can I do with that? I could brute force a whole ton of potential email addresses and just try them all, whole ton of common first names, whole ton of common last names at this domain. I've already generated that list. It's a few gigabytes. And I just changed the domain and I can blast things out that way. So now, just by knowing this, I've already, got an attack I'm starting to prepare. A tool I built a long time ago to help with things that are like a /16 is called ScanCandid. It's up on my GitHub. I'm really excited how many people use this tool. Every now and then somebody starts at Grim and I'll get a Slack message like, hey, did you make ScanCandid? I was like, yeah, why, you use it? Yeah, I use the shit out of it. Oh, cool. I thought I was the only one. What this does is it uses the speed of a tool called Mass Scan, which was developed to scan the entirety of the internet. And I've got some tweaked methods in there of using it that allow you to figure out what hosts are actually listening on, say, an entire /16. And then, given that, start doing separate, very pointed Nmap scans against those individual IP addresses. Nmap is extremely slow, extremely noisy. There are a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of switches in Nmap you can do to make it far less noisy. And if you are using Nmap, you should absolutely be very, very, very familiar with all the command line arguments for it. It can be a very stealthy tool. Nobody realizes it. Everybody goes, Nmap, IP address, go. And then it's just, you can hear the cannon going off from half a country away. ScanCandid, you can go in and tweak and make even more quiet, but overall, it does exactly what it needs to do. It doesn't just scan hosts. It also goes through and it finds out what, based on what IP addresses are up, it goes and it gathers a bunch of information about those hosts. It gathers names for those hosts, publicly registered names that might be associated. You might have multiple names associated with one IP address. You might have multiple IP addresses associated with one, host name. We're talking host name, .domain name, something like that, subdomains. It goes all the way down to subdomains, and it creates different kinds of flat files that have all of this different information. Here's a list of IP addresses that are just all hosts that are up. Here's a list of IP addresses that are all hosts that are listening on port 25. Here is a list of IP address and host name that I found. All different files. Why am I creating tons of different files, flat files like this, instead of putting them in a database that might be easy for a human to read? It's because you can feed those tools back into you can feed those files back into other tools that you're using. I wanted to make a whole bunch of flat files and like, here's, what even am I doing? Am I trying to do some kind of SMB share based attack? Cool. I got to take this flat file that ScanCannon generated that is just all SMB shares that it found, and I can feed that right into my next tool. It saves you so much time in having to parse a lot of that out. So ScanCannon, we're gonna go back and we're gonna look up that /16, which if you throw out /16 at nmap, you might want to come back in a couple of days. And also they're gonna block you. But you throw ScanCannon at it, a few hours, maybe a day, it depends. But you're gonna get a whole ton of really cool output of what the entire attack surface of this organization looks like, including all the different ports, all the different servers are listening in, what their host names are. What's cool about host names? Host names are often very indicative of what the system does. There's a lot of open source intelligence leaked in just naming your systems. So we're going to get all that. And that's going to allow us as human beings, intelligent attackers, to hone in on like, oh yeah, I don't care about this, don't care about this. That looks interesting. VPN.cityofchicago.org. I certainly want to go talk to that system. Things like that. And so now, like we found what are we looking for? What's as far as going back to like, how do we own this organization? How do we quickly, what are we trying to do? We'll say we're trying to become the domain admin in this organization. What are we looking for? We're going to be looking for means of authenticating against that network. And I mentioned VPN. Sure, VPN is great. But oftentimes you're going to find, especially these days, you're going to find a VPN. Actually, these days, mid-pandemic, the real problem is that so many companies have stood up VPN concentrators that they didn't have before. They didn't stand them up properly. A lot of them don't have multi-factor authentication on them. So we're back actually to seeing that you can just try brute forcing a lot of VPN logins and getting onto the network. Failing that, you are going to find a lot of larger organizations do have that multi-factor authentication or something like that, and you're going to go, this is not great. What we're looking for, that aside, is places to attempt to authenticate against their internal Active Directory. Places where we can figure out what credentials we have or can generate that are valid for use somewhere inside of there. And things I look for are, I have this old dude habit of pointing at screens when I have this thing that can do it for me. What we're looking for is like, I'll just magnify this. Office 365. You're looking for something that says like Office 365. You're looking for something that's like RDP, remote desktop. You just see port 3389. Remote desktop is all over the place. What do we got up here? Is this VPN? We're looking for VPN. We're looking for something that definitely is going to have Active Directory authentication. And you go, well, what the hell are you putting a remote desktop on the internet? That's stupid. What tool am I using here? I'm not going to say I think we all. That's an insulting thing to say. I'm using a tool called Shodan here, just to get the graphic representation. This information is from 2021. That was the last update of these numbers. So what am I looking at here? Port 3389. What is port 3389? It's screaming at me. There it is. I don't want to be the one screaming in this room. It feels weird. It's RDP. It's remote desktop. It's a way of directly authenticating against an active system inside of a network and connecting to it and communicating with it. What do we got here? What are we looking at? Oh, about 5 million of them. Oh, cool. Most of them in the U.S. That's great. That's real exciting. Just sitting there, just waiting, just asking, literally asking you to authenticate against them. We see our VPNs up there. We've got Office 365 down here. Office 365 is often not obvious because it lets you white label it. You can brand things, you can stick stuff on there, but in the back end, when you're looking at the banners, you're going to see that Office 365. Cool. So this is what we're looking for. ScanCannon tries to find all of these as well. That's the bottom line. We're compiling all of our logins here. This is what we're trying to do. Should have brought some water up. What else do we do? We're trying to find other information about the organization. Oh, that was a bit. Anyway, yeah. So let me talk about VPNs real quick, like I haven't been talking about VPNs already. Because VPN is a technology that's been around for a really, really, really long time, large organizations, especially organizations that have gone through multiple mergers and acquisitions, have a lot of old crap just dangling off the edges of their networks. And a lot of times that old crap is real dangerous old crap, like VPN concentrators. One of my favorite stories was I found a VPN concentrator and I was able to log in to it. It wasn't using multi-factor authentication, even though their other ones were. I was able to authenticate against it, connect my machine to the network, and then I was in. And so, when we're talking through the report, I go, I was able to find this thing. What is it? What is this? Why is this there? And they're like, oh, that one's decommissioned. I said, well, okay, I'm able to authenticate against it. And I was able to log into the network. And they go, yeah, but we know about it. It's been decommissioned. And then they pull up my laptop and I'm like, I'm able to do it right now. And then they go, right, but it's a decommissioned one. So for those of you who want to be a penetration tester, I suggest meditation. So Zen, take a step back, regroup. Those conversations happen a lot, and I'm like, that's not an isolated incident. That happens a lot. Oh, we decommissioned it. I can talk to it. It responds. It's not decommissioned, and so you'll find those a lot dangling way out there. And it's like, oh, if I was attacking city. Anyway, I don't want to get into stuff that's still out there. You'll find old stuff. Just don't be deterred by, it's got MFA on it, so I'm not even going to bother trying to authenticate against it. Going all the way back to the results from ScanCannon, you may find some other way of logging in or authenticating that the customer did not tell you about. Because oftentimes as a pen tester, customer goes, here's our network map, here's how people can connect remotely, make sure you test these systems. Go look for the ones the customer doesn't know about. Asset inventory is the number one security problem in every organization on the entirety of this planet. Nobody knows what they have, and how do you protect what you have if you don't know you have it? ScanCannon does your asset inventory for you. You're going to end up with a better asset inventory, at least the edge of the network, than the customer has, and that's more and more true the larger the customer is. I use the phrase customer a lot because we like to pretend like we're legit. What else are we looking for? We're looking for documents, anything that might be hosted publicly in a document format on their website, and not just things that have hyperlinks just sitting out there for you to click on, but sometimes so. There's a bunch of tools that'll go through and just scrape through websites, and you can set them to get however granular without getting into these tools. But you can scrape through and start grabbing lots and lots and lots of documents. Documents are useful for two reasons. One, obviously, the content of those documents. Do those documents leak any information that is useful for me getting further into this organization? i.e., did I find a publicly hosted document that informs employees of how to connect to the VPN? And it goes through some system maybe I hadn't discovered yet. And I go, oh, that's where it is. Now I can start messing with that system. That's a thing that's happened. That's real. Two, documents have metadata. Metadata is a whole bunch of stuff that is usually automatically added into the back end of documents. It's hidden-ish data. It's very easy to pull out, but it's data that's not just directly handed to the user. And the data is often username of the person who created the document, full name of the person who created the document, computer name that created the document, sometimes, yes, an IP address of where that document was created. You can all put together why all of that information is very useful. Again, just going back to the usernames and full names, we're going back to I'm still making valid usernames for this environment. All of these tools I also have listed in an appendix on this slide deck, so you can go check that out too. One of my favorite tools I like to use also for gathering usernames, like I said, we're just trying to gather usernames. What are we doing? We're trying to authenticate. We found our places to authenticate. Now, how are we going to authenticate? Well, what's the first step in authentication? It's the something you are. It's your username. So I can, like I said, I can brute force the usernames by guessing based on formats that I've discovered. I can use tools like this, one of my favorites, hunter.io. Why is hunter.io one of my favorites? It's because it does things like this where it blurs out certain parts of the names. But it's not that good at it. And so you can really, really, really easily scrape a ton of valid email addresses, and Hunter finds these email addresses all over the internet on its own. If you have an organization with a Salesforce license, or you can just go buy I think you like monthly, like minimum Salesforce license, like $100 or something a month. Salesforce will just give you everyone's email address at a company. An email address is often a valid means of authenticating. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. So I'm still scraping through there, and I'm finding, what am I finding? I'm finding valid usernames too. I'm finding, once again, confirmation of the format of those email addresses. What do we got here? What do we got here? It just looks like first initial last name at google.com. Another common way of doing this. You should never do this. You should never have a username or an email address that is able to be guessed based on information that's known about you. First initial last name, garbage, because I can guess it. Especially if I am targeting an individual. If I know you work at some company and I know their format, now I know your email address. Really easy. This goes back to, we're just talking about, I already mentioned this. You can go back to figuring out what members in an organization have elevated access. So if you're trying to do spear phishing or log in as a very specific person because you don't want to blast an organization with 6,000 login attempts, go back to this. Oh, we got a nice phone number there. And I don't mind putting it up there because Chris Kirby put that up there, or Kevin Kirby put that up there. Not my problem. So I'm not going to talk about defense because we don't have time. You guys can go, you can guess, you can go back and look and see if you're right. You can Google how to defend against that stuff. So now we've got an entire footprint of this organization. We have knowledge of a whole bunch of different places we can attempt to authenticate against Active Directory. I want to really emphasize that that's what's important. Why do we care about Active Directory? Because that's the core user base of the network. If you can authenticate against Active Directory, you can authenticate against tons and tons and tons of their internal services. And those internal services are often things that allow you to then modify, access things that you're looking for. You don't want to be able to authenticate against their Slack. Slack can be extremely useful for further phishing, as we saw in, who remembers the Uber leak that just happened, the massive Uber hack? That was all through somebody just in the Slack like, I don't know how to access this thing. Can you help? I work here, I promise. And the company was absolutely destroyed by it. But we're trying to get the most access the fastest. We're trying to become an insider threat. We're trying to become an employee of this company. How do you do that? Well, you need an Active Directory login. This is how we're doing it. So we've got our footprint. We've got places to attempt to log in. We have a whole crap ton of usernames even. So what haven't we done? We haven't done a vulnerability scan, right? Seems like I'm like forgetting something. We generally don't do vulnerability scans. Vulnerability scans are super critical, and they're something that you as a defender, a defensive team, as IT administrators should absolutely be doing constantly inside of your organization. Why does an attacker not do a vulnerability scan? One, it's the easiest thing on the planet to catch. It's noisy as hell, intentionally. Two, ScanCannon already found anything we actually care about. Your vulnerability scan, let me go back to talking about vulnerabilities and why the whole concept of this kind of stupid for what we're doing to begin with. How many, and I don't know how many people here actively keep an eye on like vulnerabilities that come out every month and the CVSS scores and things. How many CVSS 9 or 10 vulns do we have come out monthly? How many, let's say in major operating systems, something Active Directory related, whether it's Outlook, whether it's Windows, whether it's Red Hat. How many Sev 10s drop where like it's on the news and you need to drop everything and come in and work on a Saturday so we can get this patched? How many times a year does that happen? Perhaps once? Perhaps? And even then, it only affects a very small subset of systems. So vulnerabilities that are useful to that extent, vulnerabilities that allow us to bypass authentication, like what makes something a Sev 10? Authentication bypass, remote code execution as an elevated user without authenticating. Those are the things that give you that Sev 10. Those almost never exist, and when they do exist, they get patched real fast. Intelligent attackers do not exploit software vulnerabilities. It's the lottery if you're able to do that. Oh man, it's a banner day. You laugh your ass off. You can't believe it. Because it doesn't happen. Because those things don't exist. Because when they do exist, they're often very quickly patched. And if they're not It's not on a useful system. It's a perfect storm to exploit a software vulnerability. What are we doing then? We're exploiting, I used to say lazy sysadmins, and that's not fair. We're exploiting overworked systems administrators. We are exploiting people who have cut corners because they needed to get a system stood up and working as fast as possible for some team somewhere. And again, the larger the organization, the more this happens. It's crazy. The larger an organization is, the easier of a time you will have attacking it. It's like one other scenario is where that's the case. It's nuts. We're exploiting these people who were forced to stand up a system and get it to a base level functionality, and then they go, I'll secure it later. I don't have time for this right now. It's up. I'm busy securing this thing from 3 years ago. I'll get to that in 3 years. I come in a year later and start exploiting all these cut corners, things they didn't have time to put two-factor authentication on. We'll get to it later. It's up. You can authenticate it. I'll get to it later. That's what we're exploiting. We're exploiting that scenario. And the bigger an organization is, the more that scenario exists, right? So what do we got now? We got places to authenticate against Active Directory. Let's say we've got a whole flood of usernames I've figured out. What are we missing? Well, we got half the credentials, right? What are we missing? One other half. We're missing the passwords. I don't have any freaking passwords, right? I like to do a trick here. I told you all this isn't going to be a cheap, crappy magic show, and I lied. How about that? The hacker up here lied to you. I'm going to psychically deduce the top passwords used in large organizations, very large enterprises. We're talking Fortune 500, Fortune 100. The top, and I'm going to put them on the screen here. And I forgot to update some of them, and you're going to see the trick real when I show it, and it's going to be real funny. I've psychically pulled this from the entire planet, and I've compiled it by sitting. And like I said, best part about it, like if you're going to be a penetration tester, you're going to want to learn to meditate. If you get real good at that meditating, the passwords will come to you. And they've come to me, and they've been presented to me, and they look like this. This is psychic. This is not, I don't expect all of you to be able to do this. I understand. I'm not telling you, oh, we're all just psychic and you can do this. This is something only I can do. Okay? But feel free to ask me, and I'll psychically look up in the ether and tell these to you. And you'll see, I haven't updated these in a while. Why is this? Who knows what? I want to talk specifically for these on the side. Why? What causes this? Password rotation. How often you got to rotate your passwords for the NIST standard? Every 90 days. Every freaking 3 months I got to come up with a new password that's not the same as my old password, and I have to remember it. And no way in hell you're going to get me to use a password manager. It's preposterous. Can you imagine having to use a password manager? It's like one extra step, and it already took you 15 years to convince me to start using MFA. Now I got to use a password manager? Forget you. Every 3 months, the season changes. Every 4 months, the year, or every 12 months, the year changes. I have an infinite list of passwords, and then what do? Oh, and man, here's everyone thinks they're crafty with this, right? I should use the magnifier. Throw in the exclamation point. Oh, I need a special character. What's the first special character? It's the exclamation point. Just stick it at the end. There you go. Shut up. There's your freaking special character. Are you happy? Fine. I'm trying to go to work. And people think they're crafty. What else do people do? Oh, they'll put a 0 instead of an O and an at instead of an A. Come on. It's real easy for me to figure out. And what's the other one? This, you're like, nobody does this anymore. Everyone does this. Capital P, throw a number at the end, number and exclamation point. There, I did it. I got one uppercase, one lowercase. I got a number. I got a special character. I'm trying to work. This is how this happens. Passwords are garbage, and we need to stop using passwords, and I do not have time for that rant. This is why passwords are garbage, because people think they're cute, and people hate you when you make them use it. How badly do people hate you when you make them use it? This is how bad people hate you when you make them use passwords. I didn't make this up. This is something actually a tip Chris Nickerson gave me. F, I don't want to use, so there's some young folks in here. I'm going to watch my mouth. This is real common because people think they're cute and they're angry. And cute, angry people are the most easily exploited. Write that down. Quote me on that. Tweet it out. Yeah. Oh, then what do? You stick on your 20 or 21, 22. Oh, I need an exclamation point. Passwords are stupid. This one in the middle, company activity and QL. There's a tool called QL that will scrape terms from a company's website, and you can kind of use that to figure out like, oh, what does this company do? What is like a common theme in the company? And people will make passwords based on common themes in the company, especially if they have a help desk. That help desk is gonna, so many times, is gonna have a default password that they're gonna reset everyone's account to. And they're I'm getting hand waves over here. And they're gonna set it to something that's like company thing 21 exclamation. Anyway, we can guess it. You guys would get what's going on here. What do we use? Now we've got our credentials. We've got our logins. What do we use to start doing that? Burp Suite is a great tool. The Community Edition doesn't do this anymore. It's pretty easy to do brute force attacks when you've got these two word lists to do. You don't really even have to use Burp Suite anymore. It's so easy to do with like Python. Learn a little bit of Python. You could do it that way. Another way to do it, Mail Sniper. Mail Sniper lets you use what I've been talking about, email addresses as a valid username. So even if you can't figure out internal usernames on the AD network, Mail Sniper lets you use, pending that they're using Outlook Web Access or some kind of Exchange backend, lets you use those email addresses as logins. And it works for Office 365 now. Black Hills keeps updating it. It's amazing. In many cases, it bypasses multi-factor authentication. It's okay. We don't expect you to. And Mail Sniper is also an amazing tool for being able to quickly rifle through people's inboxes. Why are we rifling through inboxes? That's probably the single most important place where company-based information is stored, like real critical information. It's users sending it back and forth. What do we see people emailing back and forth the most that's useful? Credentials. Constantly sharing credentials. Everybody loves to share credentials, and they do it in email. Failing that, over in Slack or Teams or whatever. And especially if it's in Teams, you can log into Teams. So I won't hang around on this too long. We got to phishing. I don't got to tell anybody about phishing. It's kind of dumb that I mentioned phishing. Anybody who has had a job has had to go through anti-phishing training, and we all know, okay, we know to look out for phishing. It works. It's the number one thing that works. If you go look at like every compromise that has had publicly documented information on the kill chain that was able to compromise that enterprise, it started with phishing. This is still how we're doing it. We're still emailing people and getting them to click on shit. Forget everything that I've said up until now because just phish them. That's the clip art I use at the top. I like to call out this woman. That's the person in the sock going, why would you click on this? These aren't even words. Why did you click? And you do. I did talk about how we don't really exploit software vulnerabilities, except in, rare circumstances where you're kind of hitting the lottery and you can't. Well, a way to do that without doing a vulnerability scan is to do little feelers out there for, this is CISA's top 10 vulnerabilities for 2022. The top 10 most exploited vulnerabilities CISA sees actively being used successfully in the wild against companies. What's super interesting about this? Somebody tell me something you didn't expect to see in a 2022 list of actively exploited vulnerabilities. This is 2020 in there. That's a 2-year-old vuln, isn't it? In the top 10 globally on the internet. So you've got a great chance of something from 2020 working. And you can go look up what those are. Going further down that list, outside the top 10, there's a 2012 in there. Skipping over the defense, I think we're going to be okay in time. So we're able to brute force our way in. We were able to log in. We had credentials. We have, let's say, long story short, we've RDP'd in. We're on the VPN, something like that, right? What do we do now? One of my favorite things to do, so we need persistence. We need to make sure that we can't get caught. We need to make sure that we have elevated privileges to execute the things we want to execute. We want to make sure that if we lose our connection, we can come back. And so generally what we'd have is a little kind of mod, some kind of rat, something like that phones home back to our servers. And when it gets disconnected, it keeps trying. They're real easy to build. There's a trillion of them. Don't worry about it. Where do we hide it so that EDR can't find it? You hide it inside the EDR. You inject your code into the endpoint detection and response agent's code so that the antivirus becomes the virus. And the system inherently, these antivirus, these endpoint detection response applications, A, they're often real easy to do this to. B, they run with system level privileges. So that effectively lets you execute whatever the hell you want on these systems. And this is, you can watch a 2-hour YouTube video just on how this works. But that's one of the first steps we do. I want to get through all this, and I got 12 minutes. Next thing we do, run this, next thing we do in between is now we've got our host system connected to the network. I like to use a tool called proxy chains or something like that. It's basically a tool that lets us run a bunch of tools locally from my couch and proxy the communications from them back and forth across the VPN. So that's how a lot of this goes now. I'm going to use a tool called Responder. Who's familiar with Responder? Cool. I like this because then I don't have to spend way too long on these things. Responder is a tool that, guess what it does? It responds. It listens for things on the entire network that are going, hey, I can't find this system. I'm trying to find this SMB share. I'm trying to figure out how to get out to the internet. Is there a proxy server I can use to get out, to send my traffic through to get out to the internet? I'm looking for this file share that used to be here and I can't see it now. Does anyone know that file share's IP address? If you just fire up Wireshark and just passively listen on a system, you'll see that. If you fire up Responder -A, you will see that. What Responder does is it responds to those things. Oh yeah, that file share, that's me. What's up? I'm looking for this file. Okay, I got to make sure you're who you say you are though, so please send me credentials. Okay, now you can come in. That's what Responder does. It says, hey, that's me, but please send me credentials. And then the computer sends credentials. And then what do you have? Credentials. It sends them often. It tries to get them to send them in what are NCLM hashes. The hashes Responder collects cannot be passed. For those of you familiar with pass the hash, what they can have done is be cracked. We'll talk about cracking in a little bit. But another tool that I like to use in conjunction with Responder, and by the way, Responder has a lot of associated listeners that you fire alongside of it. I like to use Responder in conjunction with Impacket. If you're familiar with Impacket, IMPACKET, Impacket has a lot of tools that will provoke questions on the internet, and then Responder will respond to them and collect the things. So just remember that. So then after that, another thing I love to use is CrackMapExec. CrackMapExec primarily exploits unsigned SMB communications, which is by far the most common communications across these corporate networks. It keeps getting expanded. This is probably the most powerful tool that I mentioned inside of this talk. Overall, what it's doing is it's looking for any systems and shares or anything that you can log in with a null session that means no credentials and get something out of. Looking for it does various exploits to get into systems in various ways, and I'm trying to speed this up here for you guys. It can be used to both steal credentials, and also you can give it credentials, which it will then use to log into to see what other systems can those credentials log into, and then what can I steal off of those systems, and it kind of goes in this loop like that. Exceptionally powerful tool. CrackMapExec. You're going through, and what we're doing now is kind of a combination of post-exploitation, and we're going back into that recon loop again, right? I'm in some system, I'm seeing what other systems I can get in and exploiting things. I'm exploiting null sessions, I'm taking cookings, I'm taking session tokens, I'm taking credentials. Can I use those credentials to log into more systems. Okay, now I'm in those systems. What can I do? This is a crazy amount of stuff for a human being to have to do. So we have tools like CrackMapExec that do that for us, and they're very easy to use. Speaking of passwords, if I'm trying to crack passwords, what do you like? Brute force cracking passwords by randomly generating strings and hoping they work is the absolute slowest way to do anything on the planet, and you should never do it unless you have absolutely exhausted every other possible avenue. I will say you don't need an 8 GPU cracking rig to do password cracking. You do need it if you are doing the random string generation garbage, you'll never get it method. But on so many gigs, I have cracked passwords in organizations with this thing. A 5-year-old MacBook Pro. You don't need a massive GPU for this. What you need is to understand the password policy within an organization, which will allow you really narrow down the key space of what it will and will not be a valid password. And you tell your cracker to don't even generate invalid passwords for this organization, stick to just this. But first and foremost, people are all the same kind of cute, and they love to reuse passwords all over the place. And so these are some screenshots from my torrent server where I am actively seeding so many leaks, so many password leaks. And I just, let's talk about, y'all know how well text compresses. I have 364.65 gigabytes of compressed text passwords all leaked up there. These are the word lists that I use to start doing password guessing. If you have word lists, your password guessing and your cracking is going to go way faster. And you could use these word lists, and then you can start doing permutations like, change all of the O's to zeros, change all of the A's to add symbols, the trash that people who think they're cute do. And it goes way, way, way faster. That's how real password cracking happens. You can use MinuteCast once you're inside of a system to directly dump plain text credentials sometimes, depending on the operating system. And people respond to a lot of this and go, oh yeah, but Windows patched that out. Windows patched this out. Microsoft made it so that doesn't work anymore. This doesn't work anymore. You can't do that. Hey, there's a lot of times where the patching out that Microsoft does is just a registry setting, because a lot of organizations have to change that registry setting back to work with older technology that still exists in their environment. And the bigger the company is, the more common that is. And so just because something's been patched out, no, it doesn't work anymore, in a default brand new installation of Windows Server 2024, doesn't mean you should not try it, because you're going to have tons of ancient crap, and you're going to have tons of workarounds that systems admins have gone in and flipped and made vulnerable again to work. So MinuteCast dumps plain text credentials right out of memory. It dumps session tokens. Session tokens are effectively things you can use to prove that you're supposed to be logged into a system right out of memory. And then you have those MinuteCasts. Do it. Then we use a tool called Bloodhound. So this tool just goes around the network asking all of the systems, including the domain controllers, who's logged in here? What's the name of the system? Who's logged in here? What level of access do they have? What is their privilege level as a user within this system? And what is their privilege level within Active Directory? Are they a regular user? Are they an administrator? Are they a domain administrator? And it will just create these really nice maps for you. This map here, this is one I personally made for an actual live organization. They can get really, really, really big. One of the red ones, I want to point out all of these red ones that we have here. The red ones that we're looking at are all systems where the user who is logged in has local administrator privileges. That means if you just go into that system and take over that user's account, you can execute pretty much any kind of code you want on that system. Those are the ones we're looking for. What kind of things can you execute on that system that are super useful? You can run MinuteCast, you can dump session tokens. So what we do with this is we go back, we trace a little map, and what we're trying to figure out is what systems have, at the very least, a user whose credentials or session token I do have is also on a system that has, see in these little groups here, these are Active Directory groups. It says what group they're a part of. So we're looking for what system has a user that I have become or can become and a user I want to become, both logged in with active sessions on that system. And so we hop around our little bloop, bloop, bloop. And so we get to that system, we hop onto a system, we grab a session token and then we log into the next system, and we grab credentials, we log into the next system. And we kind of do this, and the tools I've been telling you about help you do that real fast until you land on a system that, what you're trying to do here is find a system that has a logged in domain administrator account. And then, yeah, this is what we're doing. We're just yoinking. We're hopping a system. We go, oh, credentials, yoink, certificates, yoink, cookies, yoink, and then we just keep running. Another thing we can do once we have local admin privileges on these systems is what's called Kerber roasting. I'm sure you've all heard a ton about Kerber roasting. Not going to go deep into what Kerber roasting does. There's no time. Kerber roasting effectively lets you authenticate against application services within a network by pretending to be a user whom you actually aren't. You can do this. There's a couple of ways. One is called Kerber roasting. One is called ASREP style Kerber roasting, or just ASREP or something like this, using this tool called RubeAS. Long story short, we're doing the same thing. We're hopping around and we're yoinking session tokens. We're yoinking tickets that allow us to authenticate against other systems. Where I'm just about wrapping up. I see you. I told you, this is real nutrient dense. So we're just yoinking things that allow us to become other employees of this company. And this stuff's not hard. And this stuff is real easy, especially Kerber roasting. And do I get into, yeah, this is certified pre-owned Active Directory certificate services. This is another thing that just exploits, everybody was told like, oh, you got to start signing all your communications. You got to encrypt communications between all your servers, and your SMB needs to be signed. And I'm sure you've all heard about all this. People had to rush to do this, and they screwed it up real bad because it's real hard to do properly. And there's a lot of tools out there that exploit that allow you to, say, steal certificates and become a server that users will authenticate against because their machine has verified that you are the one they should be authenticating against. It allows you to steal end user certificates to become that user and say, let's start encrypting communications using my certificate, so it's definitely the person you think you're talking to and not some outsider threat. So this is a whole other thing you could do at this point too. And there's a tool called Deathstar. Who remembers PowerShell Empire and Deathstar? Show of hands. Been a long time since we've heard that used, right? It's because their whole goal is they wanted to show that PowerShell can be used as a devastating exploitation framework inside of an organization, and you should turn PowerShell off. They did that. They succeeded. They stopped supporting the project like 4 years ago. It doesn't matter, because in large organizations, you're going to have a whole ocean of stuff that's way more than 4 years old, and the stuff that Deathstar does is going to be nuts. What Deathstar is it's stupid. It's a one-click. Please, you're in the network, and you start the time bomb, and you run, and you go get a sandwich, and you come back, and then you have domain admin credentials. It does everything that I just walked you through. From post-exploitation on. It attempts so many hacks, so many exploits. It's noisy as hell, but it's real funny when it works. And just because it's not supported anymore, so this repository has been archived, doesn't mean you should write it off as broken and non-functional, because if you're dealing with old tech, it might work. All right, so once you've done all that, go back, buddy. Anyway, so now you're able to get your domain admin credentials. You get your domain, you've gotten onto a system, you see this domain admin logged in there, you steal their cookies, so what? One thing you can do is just start exploiting your control of that domain admin account. What I like to do is make myself my own. Make yourself a brand new domain administrator account, so that if somebody else realizes, oh, the other account's been compromised, change the password, all that, doesn't matter. Now you have your own. Now you're a domain administrator who works for this company. Nobody alerts on new domain admin account creation. Nobody alerts on domain account successful login. When you always should. Why do they not alert on that? Because people are using their domain admin accounts to log into crap all the time, all over the place. They should not be. And then what do you do once you're domain admin? Now this is where you launch your kill chain. What's your goal? What are you trying to do here? And back in the day, it used to be steal credit cards. It used to be steal corporate information, steal intellectual property. What is these days? You drop your ransomware. You're domain admin. You're allowed to authenticate against every system in this corporation. You use that with your little script to push your ransomware out. You move to Belize. You're a billionaire. And that's often how it goes so many times. When we see ransomware in the news and we say, oh, phishing led to ransomware. I just walked you through how that very often works. So all this is defensive stuff I'm going to skim through. Know that it's all in here. You guys can read the slides up on my GitHub. I'm super out of breath. Like I said, huge appendix of all the tools that I talk about in here and links where you can go download them, read more about them. And that is everything. Thank you so much. I've been Johnny Christmas, the director of training over here at Grim. Please check me out on the Twitters. Check me out on our website. I will be around the conference all day. Ask me 1,000 questions, please. I can talk about this until they tear me off the stage, have you seen? So thank you all. I'll see you around.